All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, me. Welcome back, Neal. Welcome back, Rana. We can say that. We actually can say that because it is contextualized. Rana Abdelhamid, we're super excited to have you back. This is the first time we're having a two-parter.
Yay!
So you're very special.
You're very special.
Hashtag blessed.
Hashtag we are blessed. Quick context here for returning listeners, new listeners alike. Welcome back to Leave Looking Up. I'm your co-host, Amer Jandali, joined by Neal Ludevig. This is where we have uplifting conversations about the state of the world. We cover the spectrum of social issues and all kinds of things that leave us personally looking up. And this is a friend of ours named Rana Abdelhamid, and we checked in with her earlier in the season when she was ferociously running for Congress here in New York. There have been a lot of developments, and the stars have aligned for us to have her back here in the studio to hear how the last few months have been going, because although it didn't go exactly how you were hoping or expecting, you are nonetheless persisting. So we're going to start it there.
Well, it's such a graceful frame of my last of the last 6 months of my life. I would definitely have framed it much more aggressively. So I appreciate your that was very, very, very nice. So yeah, absolutely. I think there was a lot of unexpected things that happened after we all were speaking and we're having a conversation just about the congressional campaign that I was running. Namely, I was redistricted out of the location in which I was trying to represent. I got redistricted into Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's congressional district. My district was kind of pushed all the way into Manhattan, which is not where I live, and so abruptly had to jump out of that race after 2 years of running.
Wow. So now that you've had, you said you would describe it a little bit differently. What are your words to kind of describe it? Now that you've had a little bit of distance, how do you feel about the campaign, this process, this journey?
It was definitely one of the hardest experiences of my life in so many ways. I think, and we talked about this last time, I came into this work like really from a place of love for community, for my family, for my neighborhood, and also from a place of anger, I think, just lack of representation and lack of listening and investment in housing and in just the real challenges, whether it's food insecurity or climate injustice, gender injustice that I saw so many folks in my own neighborhood deal with, but being ignored and left out by political representation. And then I felt like the culmination of the race, also the redistricting process, which did not take into account the neighborhood that I was running to represent, and in many ways erased the North African community, which gerrymandering oftentimes does. It erases minoritized groups. It felt kind of like the reason why I jumped in was also confirmed, right? And the reason why, the reason that forced kind of this race to end. So it was definitely hard. Yeah. But we're leaving looking up, so we gotta.
Yeah.
We're the hopeful
are we going to say that at the end? You are looking up, and I can tell it. I can sense that energy in how you are and how you're kind of describing this. And I think it feels like there's a lot of different components to this. And I know last time you gave some really good context for what we should be understanding about this kind of process of running for Congress and a little bit of the districting process. Can you just dive in a little bit more, just understanding what changed, what specifically happened, and what was the catalyst for you that said, okay, that's it. If this has changed, I can't be here anymore.
I mean, what changed was the map. I was running to represent a district that made up parts of Queens and parts of Manhattan. The redistricting process made it so that it was just Manhattan. And so I was, like I had said from the beginning, I was running to represent my neighborhood, and now my neighborhood wasn't in the district. And so it didn't make sense for me to continue running.
Right. And so the campaign obviously ended early. What went on behind the scenes in the campaign as you arrived to that decision?
You know, it was very similar to the conversations that I had when I first jumped in, right? Like, I also maintained throughout the race that this was a collective experience. Like, so many members of my neighborhood and my family and like organizers who I'd been working with since I was 14, people who have been part of and leaders within the progressive movement who are part of this broader coalition that we had built were part of the decision-making process for me to run. They were also part of the decision-making process for me to decide whether the direction of the campaign after redistricting. And so a lot of conversations, a lot of reflection, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation to really understand what made sense for us as the next step.
What feels like the next step right now?
Well, you know, none of the work, I'm a movement person, which maybe a lot of people may not know what the hell that means. I don't even know what the hell that means, but it just means that I do a lot of community-based organizing work. And that never stopped for me, you know, whether I was a political candidate, electorally, now as a nonprofit leader and as a community organizer, I still continue to do that work. So whether it's delivering food, because of the reality of food insecurity, or advocating against a luxury development, or making sure that our community can preserve and tell our stories and have access to mental health services and other economic opportunities, those things continue. And we're using the momentum from the campaign to do that work even more strong than we had originally.
Can you talk a little bit more about the process of coming to this decision and what I think so much of our podcast and what our listeners, and actually even right before this, we were talking about listening to Jerry and Jonathan's episode, and so much actually Pierce Freelon said something. It's one of my favorite quotes from it, where he talks about rejection is just redirection. And this idea that we're really our paths are fluid, but you know the universe unfolds as it should. What was the process in thinking as you were being redirected in this way, the first few weeks, the first few months, and now we're almost a year out from that decision, right?
Yeah, listen, I'm a religious person. I believe God makes things happen for a reason, and I do believe that this is an opportunity for redirection. And I believe that this was racist gerrymandering, right? This isn't me applying for a job and not getting the job. This is me and my community investing almost $1 million, investing time, investing energy, having vision, believing in an electoral process that oftentimes marginalized and overlooked us for the first time, and then being completely pushed out of that system and of that process in an unequitable, unjust way. And so I hold that at a macro level, and I hold that with an understanding that oftentimes our democratic system isn't set up for minoritized communities to have equal representation and have equal access, with also being optimistic and recognizing the power of my community and what we built, and knowing that we're going to continue to fight for our needs and continue to build our collective power, even in the face of all that.
That's Rana, thank you for saying that. It's so important to connect with that, and that's really, really powerful. That's actually it's giving me permission to be upset. I'm a natural person that is, Neal and I are both optimistic, looking up and those sort of things, and it's just so important to also hold true the frustration and anger when things are not aligning in a way that they are supposed to or they should, or that sort of thing. That's really frustrating. I'm really sorry that experience landed on your lap like that.
No, and I appreciate that. I think it's so hard to be able. This is actually one of the first times I spoke about this experience immediately after it happened and as it was happening. And this is probably the first time I'm speaking about it now again outside of the context of it actually happening. And I think, like, you know, in processing over the past couple of months, I've also allowed myself to feel that frustration, because I do think in order to heal and kind of move on, you're kind of like, you know, things happen for a reason. You never know, you know, like, you never know this. We kind of assume that this might happen, like all these things to kind of throw it under the rug. But I do think it's important to pause and recognize how systemically this was really violent and this was really messed up and is a history and is part of a legacy of racist gerrymandering that has existed across this country, and is part of a reality of voter suppression and the unraveling of our democratic process and people's increased mistrust in our democracy.
Man, it's I'm just in that space also where I feel like I've heard about this so many times, where you experience these, and I have friends that have experienced this kind of frustration within the system and being divided by being both demoralized and like fired and angered up, you know, to do something. And it seems like, I mean, talk a little bit about how you're navigating that juxtaposition, right? That duality, if that's what you're feeling.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, you know, when I first started doing movement work, I talked about this last time again, like, I was much more operating from a place of anger as a young person.
Yeah.
But those are fumes. It's important, right? And I think having anger is really, really important to feel. And I personally don't operate from that place in the work that I do. I think what's the only thing that's keeping me going, because this was such a hard experience, it's like so hard to talk about even now, I honestly get so emotional about it, is love. Like, I love my people, I love where I'm from, I love Queens, I want us to be able to have access to our basic needs and basic human rights. And as much as it's really sad that we live and exist in a city that's so inequitable and has so much wealth and is the most expensive place in the world, right? And so the people who are building the city every single day, who are doing this work every single day to keep the city alive, are being pushed out of it. It is the love, honestly, that is keeping me in doing this work with so much just like patience, I think, and hope.
You know, that's really great, Rana, too. And it's like overarching, like overall, I think, like, I just speak for me and Neal and I both when I just say, like, thank you for just really sharing with us about this experience. It's such a unique place. We've all felt our versions of failures in our life, and we've all felt our versions of a door closed or whatever that adversity is. And I think you're holding space for something that's incredibly unique, which simultaneously represents the feeling of a lot of people. So you yourself are a microcosm of a macrocosm. And I can only imagine how that feels. And I do want to respond with a reflection of how graceful, again, like you're taking it, which I know in and of itself takes a lot of work. And that's just so great that we get to be here with you to hold this space. There's sometimes I go on like a super nerdy tangent, especially with Neal, on some of my favorite books. And there's one in particular that's coming to mind. Not Anatomy of the Spirit, Neal. It's not that one. We might talk about that later. It's one of my favorite books. But there's another book called Power versus Force. And this is just to the point you were saying about anger and actually how important its role is. It's this book, and long story short, it's about the scale of the ascension of consciousness and different states of being that are like lower level feelings of fear, shame, guilt, kind of these things, and then contrasted to the higher feelings of joy and peace and love. And then anger is the one that's right there below the positive ones, but it's still on the top of sort of the negative ones. I'm not saying this is all negative, but that it's such a galvanizing force that you need that energy to lift you to the next level. And so it's like a natural part of that process. And I've been giving myself permission to feel that a lot lately. And then I remember the quantum jump is courage. And that feeling of courage is when you act despite fear. Like, it's not that you don't have fear, but that it's there, or any of those insecurities are there, but you're still acting anyway. And I'm sensing this sort of like beautiful exploration of those things for yourself in real time. And like, I've been following you, Neal and I have been following you. You're still doing your thing. You just got this amazing award that we can't wait to talk to you about. You're raising awareness about hijabis. You're still teaching women how to defend themselves. You're still advocating for social justice and equal rights all across the board. Like, there's a lot of energy churning there. So big just reflection back. And
Thanks.
You know,
thanks for talking about that, because I do think, like, obviously, of course, I feel anger. I feel moments of anger, and I hold a lot of anger, you know, like, there's a ton of people who didn't believe, who were kind of like, you know, we don't want to vote, we don't want to do this, like, we don't want to get involved, and who were door knocking for the first time, who donated to a political campaign for the first time, who were like, we're gonna vote for the first time, right? And when I walk down Steinway Street, like, I'm friends and know a lot of the small business owners and street vendors, and like, some people like redirected their anger towards me, you know, like people's perception, like my own, like people who are like my ride or die, right? Who really gave so much. And I understand, like, they gave so much to this campaign, and it was such a letdown, you know? And and for me to withdraw without, you know, the nuanced political context of why I would withdraw, you know, like all these things, for them, it almost felt like I gave up, is how they read it, right? And there were moments when I even internalized that, and I'm constantly going back and forth, and, you know, maybe I could have done this or I could have done that. But it's even just sitting with that decision, not just alone, but in community and in collective, creates this, you feel the frustration, right? And you don't know who to direct it at, and it's very much a mess. But I do think that there is important space for that to be held, and for that to be processed as well, and we have been processing it collectively.
Wow, that's really, man. That's really tough when your ride or dies are the people that are coming to you. Oh man, it's really hard. I've been in that space too all of us, we're entrepreneurs, we're trying to push these initiatives, and we're promising, hey, we're going to do these things, we're going to fight and advocate for you and create this platform. And when you're not feeling like you delivered, I think that's it. You know, I often beat myself up in the process, you know, when these people are kind of talking to me, and I think maybe the past few years has given a bit more of a lens on the importance of taking care of yourselves, and that, you know, we're often our worst enemies in that way. And it's important to go a little bit easy on ourselves and find ways to kind of take care of ourselves, especially in these moments. And I guess I'm curious, like, how are you taking care of yourself right now as you're going through this and experiencing this?
So it's actually been really beautiful. Like, I've been leaning so much into art and storytelling. I'm a creative person by nature. I have a million ideas a minute. And I have just been using kind of this fear. So one of the reasons why I ran for office, and I talk about this a lot, is the reality of gentrification and displacement that I am seeing in my neighborhood here in Astoria. People talk about Astoria like it's gone, like like there are no people of color here anymore, that there are no immigrants, that there are no working class people here. And in many ways, like, the demographics of Astoria have shifted substantially from when I grew up. It's night and day. And we're still here, like, we're trying to survive. And so I'm working on, you know, a couple of storytelling and art projects, and doing a ton of organizing and teaching self-defense and doing the things that I wasn't able to do that fill my cup, and doing it with people who I'm closest to, like creating art with like women who raised me, and like teaching self-defense and doing trauma-informed facilitation, like literally do a trauma-informed training to like all my aunties. Like it's like the only time I could sit my aunties down and tell them why they can't just call someone fat, you know, like it's like amazing stuff. And I feel really lucky to be able to do it.
Oh man, we need to put you in touch. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, please.
I was just saying, I mentioned Pierce before. I just think the two of you, I feel like you would connect. I mean, both of you guys
think I
have
know where
run
he was going
for office. He ran in North Carolina and lost a mayor's running for mayor.
Pierce.
And he talked about how
Pierce was our
how
first
that
guest.
loss opened up so many doors, and he channeled
was
that
running
kind of
for city
experience
council
through
in
art
South
as well,
Carolina,
and ended up being a 2-time Grammy nominee for Best Children's Album. You know, and having different generations.
The guy who beat him ended up reaching out to him, offering him a position.
I feel like I just love the idea of
for something that he would have been way more suited to do.
It's no coincidence that great minds think
so
alike.
I think that's where Neal was going to go, and we've actually been talking about this too. Like at a certain level, we're starting to hear so many really amazing things from different ones of our guests, and we're just like, oh my god, this is exactly what Rana said. Oh, dude, this is exactly what Jerry and John were talking about. We should totally introduce them. We should have both of them back. Like, I don't know. Nice. So expect some cross pollination.
Make those connections. We love it. We love relationships.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, there's something. What I was going to say before even Neal started talking is there's a natural like decompression period that has to happen. You know, I run this big event, the Marketplace of the Future. Remember, I think I told you about it.
Yeah.
When Rada first introduced us, she was telling you about like this event that I run. And I've been doing it for 6 years in a row. 2023 will be 7.
Nice.
And this year in particular, I needed like a good 2 solid months to just like really decompress before I could have the capacity. Slowly, I started seeing the pockets of new ideas and things like shining through. But then as you decompress, it just like the aperture opens up to where your energy is supposed to be turning in. And I think this is what I'm hearing from you. It's like decompress a little bit and then turning around and saying like, all right, cool. Like I want to focus on my art. I want to continue doing the work that I love, but in different ways. And it seems like that's what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. It's been very healing. It's been very good. It's soul filling. I'm literally just doing what I want. Like, I'm just like, I got this idea, I'm gonna do it, you know? Like, why not? Like, I want to go down the street and interview hijabis in New York. Why not?
Yeah, I noticed that. I've been seeing that. That's a thing.
Yeah, it's been good. Like, I've been trying to figure out how to institutionalize the memory of Little Egypt with the first gen migrants to the neighborhood, because the neighborhood was started like 30 years ago by the first generation. I'm second generation, and so like this is such a prime opportunity for us to capture that history, which hasn't been done before. And so that too, like there's just
that's cool.
A lot of things, a lot of work to do. There's so much to do.
So high level, where would you say? Oh, okay, cool. And thanks for being adaptive here. I guess we're going through Neal's internet issues, but high level, what are the things on your radar?
Like the different work streams or different projects? Yeah.
Where's your attention going now? Like little this, little that, little this?
Yeah, my attention, I'm focused on a couple of things, all rooted kind of in thinking about housing and place and community. Some rooted in like women's rights, especially with the fight on like reproductive justice and bodily autonomy. We're seeing what's happening in Iran. We're seeing the reality of just like lack of safety here in New York, but also across the country, and like the response and how militarized and oftentimes like not community informed it is. And so I'm working on, I kind of mentioned this briefly, but I'm working on this partnership with the MoMA PS1 with Melika, where we've brought in 10 North African immigrant women to tell their stories for the first time. And it's actually going to culminate in an exhibition that will be at the MoMA on May 5th, which is going to open on May 5th. And it's amazing. Like, these 10 women are now artists. They have their own IDs. They're going to be on video. We're going to do photography, like in Little Egypt. We're going to take their photos. we've been doing like community timelines, and just it's been such a healing process for all of us. Like we meet once a month. And then part of it, which I'm so excited about, is like we're actually going to go to the Met and have a conversation about what it is to be Egyptian, and to like visit a museum in modern day context, like seeing all of our own objects, which are oftentimes presented in such a dehumanizing white gaze kind of way. Like this is our culture, our history, right? Our art, and it's just presented kind of to the white gaze. But here we're going to come in, we're going to bring our own objects and talk about like, what does a museum mean for us? And what does it mean for us as artists to present our work? So that's just an example of something I'm working on, which has been super soul-filling, that I really love. There's a couple other things, but, you know, I don't know.
Neal, the note that you left on was what's on her radar at the moment, now after a decompression period. Where's her attention going right now? So that's where we're at.
Awesome. So sorry about that. All of a sudden I was like, and I kept going too, thinking it was going to come back, but it did not.
Cool.
Keep going.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
That sounds like a cool project, and something. Please keep us in the loop about it, because that's something like on our social media. You know, that's the kind of thing. Like eventually, we want to be like, oh man, one of our guests is doing this thing. Like everybody, go check it out. Right. This is how we want to start integrating our missions, right? Our shared missions. So that sounds awesome. Curious if there's anything else that's standing out to you, and then I would love to hear about your social media and like your TikTok, and then this award that you just got that we're waiting to hear about, and take us on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so since the campaign also, I've just been really focused on Melika, which is a nonprofit that I ran before I jumped into this race, which has been my soul. It's my like life. I've been involved with it since I was a teenager, since I was 15. And we've just been doing a ton of programs, like training, doing so much self-defense, so many self-defense workshops. Like we taught like 300 Arab women last week in self-defense. I did it in Arabic. I was just like, whoa, I could teach in Arabic.
Do you speak Arabic like that?
Yeah, I do. I do speak Arabic like that.
Good for you. I can't talk about my design work in Arabic. I'm working on it. My future self's got it, but I'm not quite there yet. Good for you.
I didn't think I could, but I've been doing so much more work with with immigrant women that I've had to. And they're like, yeah, your Arabic's fine. And I'm like, thank you. But I also speak Arabic at home. So, you know, that's our primary language. Both of my parents speak Arabic. So that's how it works out. But yeah, so we've been doing a lot of stuff with that. We've been building for this vision to actually build a home for Melika in person in Queens, which would be the Melika first women's center on this side of Queens. It would be a Melika Women's Center. It would have like a gym for us to do our self-defense classes, an art gallery space, a theater. Like we're just fundraising and working towards that. And yeah, you wanted me to talk about TikTok? Yeah, I've been on TikTok, y'all. You can check it out. It's kind of just fun. Like I use my TikTok like it's my Finsta. Whenever I have an idea that I want to put out there in the world that I think is too embarrassing for my Instagram, I put it on my TikTok. That is my story on TikTok. Oh, Finsta.
Fake Insta?
Yeah. It's how Gen Z talks about like their Instagrams that are closed off to the public, because they put like all the things that the world should not see on it, but it's private.
Okay.
So that is my TikTok story.
Yeah, well, I just like it because you've been raising a lot more awareness and talking to girls about the hijab and that sort of thing. So that's really cool. Like your mission hasn't stopped.
No. I'm using TikTok really to talk about the reality of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim violence, to talk about just like people's journeys with hijab, and to talk about North African identity and indigenous communities in North Africa, and you know, just things that are deeply related to the work that I do and like what brings me to this work.
Yeah. Neal, how are you? What's anything coming up for you?
Yes. Well, I don't know where I got cut off, but the first thought is I one day I hope that you and one of our other guests and a good friend Pierce should totally connect, because both of you have experienced this space. He ran for mayor's office, it didn't work out, and then channeled all, like, he just talked about what an unbelievable blessing it was, because it carved the space for him to pursue his art. And as of last year, hosted the Grammys and was a 2-time Grammy nominee for Best Children's Album. And then ended up running for city council, became one of the youngest people that got elected, and his former opponent was his biggest advocate. And so just you feel like there feels like synchronicity right here, in that I think that great minds think alike in finding this way to channel these messages and these ideas through art. And you all having the platform to do it, with Malika and a few of the different initiatives, I just think is beautiful. So that's where my thought was going before I got cut off. So I think that was part of it. And then I think the other thought that I guess I'm curious in the future is, do you see yourself, because I remember when in our first interview you were talking about almost like having to be convinced into this. You were like, well, people kind of thought it was the Young Democrats that kind of really kind of brought this to you and kind of gave the endorsement, and it kind of went forward. Do you feel that there are plans in the future to be involved politically in this way, or is that TBD? Or talk to us about where that headspace is, if you're open to that, unless it feels too soon. Yeah,
too soon, definitely too soon. No, I'm just joking. So I get this question a lot, and my answer is that all the reasons why I wanted to run for office to begin with are still there, right? Like the lack of we still don't have North African Arab representation in New York City politics. My community still is experiencing displacement and gentrification. There's still the reality of food insecurity. There's still lack of listening and engagement with communities that I deeply care about, particularly in West Queens. And so I think that it's so important for us to have that political representation. Do I think I'm going to do it? I don't know what the timeline is gonna look like, but I feel open to the possibility, right, of like whatever tool is presented to me to be able to have impact for communities that I care about. So we'll see.
I love it. We'll definitely be there for it. I'm looking up to it. And I guess one other thing, just kind of closing out sort of that series of questions kind of connected to this, is when you were talking, when the press release that kind of put out and suspended the campaign, it talked about the suspension of the campaign, and you talked about Carolyn Maloney, and then who didn't end up winning, and now Jerry Nadler. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on them representing the reaction to Jerry Nadler winning and Carolyn Maloney. I'm just curious, where are your thoughts on that and connecting with them, because they're representatives now that have a future.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting because they're not my representatives, because I am now out of their district. So I'm actually in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district, which is great. I have a progressive representative who's now representing my community and my neighborhood, which feels like much better than what we had before. In terms of Jerry Nadler versus Carolyn Maloney, that was a very interesting race. The fact that you had two very long-time incumbents kind of going head-to-head. Obviously, Jerry Nadler is much more progressive, has much more of an effective record in terms of his leadership. And so just in terms of alignment, he felt more aligned with my values. And I do feel like that outcome represents like what communities and what the district wanted, right? Which was more progressive leadership than what Representative Maloney was offering.
Mm. Cool. Thank you for that. That's really good context and understanding. Yeah, bringing it home. That's everything from me. Amer, any questions?
Yeah, I want to hear about this Forbes
I know you've been
situation.
trying to bring it up. Sorry, I keep forgetting.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
for
Please
sure.
enlighten us.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm super surprised, but it's great. I got I don't even know what it's called. I got recognized by Forbes 30 under 30. So now I'm Forbes 30 under 30 in the social impact category. And honestly, what's so exciting, like when I first got it, I was like, I really don't even know what this means, because I think it means a lot more in the entrepreneurial space, I guess, than in the like organizing world. And so a lot of my friends who are like in business were like, oh my God. And I was like, what? But for me, I'm a little bit removed from that world. So I was kind of like, great.
I love it.
But when I got to go to the gala actually a couple nights ago, it was amazing because the people who are part of that network are incredible. And so I was like meeting just like such inspiring, really grounded, well-rounded, kind young people who just really care about the work that they're doing and are really ambitious and want to have an impact in the world. And we're really excited about the work I was doing. And I just feel lucky to be in a cohort like that and to be surrounded by people like that who also want to build relationships. So I'm at the beginning of the journey. Our conference I think is in a couple of months, our first like Forbes Women, and then the next one is in Ohio sometime in the fall. And so I'm going to see how the experience goes, but definitely excited about the network.
Yeah, that's huge. That's super, super sick. And I like hearing you nod to the ferocity and hunger of entrepreneurs.
So good.
You know, I think Neal and I in particular, we really resonate with that a lot. And and it is cool. And I like the idea of you being in that company.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. What are you going to say, Neal? I saw you.
It's also just remarkable as a reminder that you were under 30 and you've done all
Yeah.
the things that you've done. It just was
true,
like, wait,
yo.
what? And
For real.
It's very... I can't stop. Every time I meet a hero or someone that is like, wow, look at all the incredible things you've done. Somehow in my brain, it's... Those folks are elders. Those folks have infinite amounts of wisdom that is coming. And I think maybe there's like old soul mentality, but it's exciting to be reminded of this fact because the world and all the initiatives and the change that is happening and needs to happen is going to be spearheaded by young people, right? That want to create platforms that have access to tools. And it's a reminder that you don't have to be older, to make change and to be recognized for it. Yeah. Because you definitely have. So I was just like, oh, love it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very inspiring to be around like really dope young people. Truly it is.
Right? Yeah. And you're a reflection of the company that you keep around 100%.
Yes.
So I'm sure they're thinking and talking and speaking the same way about you. I wouldn't be surprised, like, oh, that fierce woman that I met at
it
the
was
gala.
actually kind of cool. It was kind of cool because I got recognized specifically, actually not for the campaign, but for the work I'm doing with Melika, the self-defense work. And so I was like, people are like, oh, so what brings you here? Like, what's the work? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a self-defense, I'm a martial artist, black belt. I teach women self-defense. And people would be like, what? Like, that is so awesome. Like, so many people would be like, can I give you a hug? And I'd be like, yes, come on, bring it. So it was kind of nice. It was nice. It was nice validation.
Yeah.
Rana, and that's cool too that you're getting validated for something slightly distinct from the reason you've been in the public eye.
I know.
It's something kind of different.
Yeah.
And it's really integrating all those parts of yourself. That's super sick. That's really great. Way to just like stay a chameleon. Way to stay adaptable. Way to stay on your toes and keeping it doing. Like I'm really excited to see how your story continues to be written. Rana Anjad, like really, Anjad in Arabic y'all means like for real. Thanks for being part of this with us on round 2. I really look forward to rounds 3 and 4 and 5 as all of our rocket ships continue to go up. I mean, this is great.
Inshallah, yes, round 3.
Inshallah.
Yeah. I think, I feel pretty good. Unless there's anything else, Rana, that you got. I think the last thing I kind of feel called to just like tie a bow on this is, you're not. I know religion and politics are not the most popular combos at the table, but like, you know, we're in a pretty integrated space here. And I just sort of feel called to like offer for our listeners and for everyone, you know, something that's, I think, really important to remember in the definition of the word Islam or Muslim. And this is something, I was raised Muslim in southern New Mexico. Both my parents are from Syria. And I kind of went on my own spiritual journey for a while. And then I took a step away from religious things, quote unquote, but not so much from spirituality. And I came to resonate with the concept of surrendering to divine will, to nature's will, to God's will, whatever it is that you sort of resonate with. And then in that space is when I realized that Islam means surrender. And a Muslim is one who has surrendered. And it's more of a philosophical approach to life and a way of being rather than quote unquote religion to me. And I'm embracing that, which how it occurs as a religion feels really integrated to me right now. And you don't need to be a quote unquote Muslim to surrender to life and the way it unfolds. And I'm, you know, I know I'm speaking for me and Neal and all of the Leave Looking Up community when we're looking and saying, like, appreciating your willingness to surrender, Rana, to the way things are unfolding for you and the courage that takes. So seriously, bless. That's what you said at the beginning. Hashtag blessed. Thank you for sharing with us and for returning to us here.
I really appreciate that. That's such a beautiful way to end, because that's something I'm working on, quite frankly. Like I love to, I'm type A, first eldest daughter of immigrant vibe. I want to be in control. I want to have everything together. And I'm learning to let chaos and let life and let God lead me, and that's definitely something that I try to remember as much as possible. So thank you for reminding me of that. It's very important.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Of course. Beautiful.
Thank you. Wow, this is so beautiful.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I feel good. Super solid. I think we're okay on time. Gosh, that was awesome. Thanks.